Whether your property is rural, suburban, or smack in the middle of the city, at some point you're liable to be pestered by nuisance wildlife. I'm George Grant Burch, a real estate and residential lifestyle consultant in Houston, Texas, and many of the recent inspections I've attended have shown history or presence of nuisance wildlife. Let's take a look at the most common nuisance wildlife found in Houston and the surrounding area and talk about a few things you can do to minimize the inconvenience and damage created by these unwanted guests. As an animal lover, a pragmatist, and a critical thinker, I'm going to point out that the best way to deal with Mother Nature's creatures is to love and accept them for the beauty and diversity they bring to our planet. But the realist, humanist, and homeowner in me knows that none of us want unbridled nature living under our roof. They're referred to as nuisance wildlife for a reason, and it's when they become a nuisance that we find ourselves having to use our evolved skills to outwit, outsmart, and outlast them. The critters we come face to face with most often in Texas are raccoons, opossums, and squirrels, and each have their own place on Earth. Just like humans, these animals are looking for a warm, dry, quiet place to raise their young with access to food and water. And just like humans, they're going to look for the path of least resistance. When our homes are providing all of these things for us, the animals just don't understand why it shouldn't provide those creature comforts for them as well. Of the three most common nuisance animals, by far the most dangerous to humans is the raccoon, for a number of reasons. First, they're highly intelligent, dexterous, and diligent. They can solve problems and manipulate objects, and they will stick to their task until they accomplish their mission, so they are worthy adversaries. They're not particularly aggressive toward humans, but any animal will defend itself viciously if threatened or cornered. Raccoons are common carriers of rabies, and their droppings carry a large number of dangerous diseases and parasites. Once they've established a latrine on your property, they will make frequent visits to relieve themselves in the same spot, creating a concentrated source of contaminants that can be dangerous to humans. Squirrels are the next most troublesome critter you're likely to encounter, if for no other reason than their sheer numbers. Squirrels have lived among humans for centuries, and their fluffy tails and adorable behavior make them a favorite diversion on visits to parks and fields. They love birdseed, and we often make sport of trying to outwit them from stealing from our backyard feeders. They spend much of their time frolicking in trees and entertaining us to no end. But when it comes time for them to nest and breed, they're going to look for a warm, quiet spot like our attics to do the deed. In our attics, they can find all sorts of comfort and entertainment and can destroy insulation, wiring, pipes, and building materials in the process. They can carry rabies and often carry fleas, ticks, lice, and the diseases that come along with them. Their scratches, bites, and detritus can carry syphilis, leptospirosis, and a host of other diseases. Opossums are the third most common unwanted guest we find in Texas, and they really are more of a nuisance than a real danger. They're timid marsupials and may hiss and fuss if approached, but they're not likely to attack and will retreat given any opportunity. If an opossum visits your garden, he's more likely to eat snails, slugs, and small rodents than your crops, although he may clean up fallen fruits if they're left on the ground. Rabies is extremely rare in opossums, but like any animal with fur, they're likely to have fleas, mites, lice, and other disease-carrying parasites. For that reason, it's important to keep them in the garden and out of the attic to protect our health and safety. While less common, bats, skunks, birds, bees, and reptiles occasionally invade our personal spaces as well, and those invaders are best handled by professionals in almost every case. If you're having an issue with unwanted wildlife getting too close for comfort, there are 3 steps to a permanent solution: evict, exclude, and eliminate. Eviction is the first step with the goal of getting the animals and their young out of your space. Trapping is generally the first thing that comes to mind, and in some cases a live trap to catch the intruder and relocate them outside is all you need. It sounds easy, but you'll need to know what you're trapping in order to do it safely and humanely. Traps need to be sized and baited correctly depending on species and age of the animal. There may be more than one animal, and there's a possibility there could be a nest full of babies that would be abandoned in your attic if you relocate mama without them. You'll also need to be prepared to manage the animal once you have trapped it. A wild animal that has been trapped will be stressed, scared, and aggressive, so releasing it back into your yard may not be the best solution. There's a chance the animals are diseased or may be carrying organisms and parasites that can endanger you and your family. Unless you have sealed their point of entry, they're likely to return as soon as you turn your back. And if there are baby animals still in the attic, they will be too small to trap, and you're going to end up with dead animals in the ceiling. That's why I always recommend using a professional wildlife control operator to assess and manage the process. They are highly skilled at determining the type of creature invading your space and can recommend a course of action that is fast, humane, and long-lasting. Using pro-grade equipment, training, and experience, they can evict the animals quickly, and it will evaluate your property to recommend steps to prevent them from returning. That leads to the second step of the process, exclusion. To prevent animals from returning, your wildlife control expert will review the exterior of your home carefully for places of access. Eaves, gables, vents, pipes, and wires all provide potential superhighways for critters to visit your attic. A mouse can get through a hole the size of a finger, and a rat can fit through a hole 2 fingers wide. And bats and bugs can get through holes even smaller than that. A squirrel can get through a 1-inch gap, and a raccoon only needs about 4 inches to squeeze through. These critters have nothing better to do than look for that hole all day, so if it's there, they're going to find it. Your wildlife exclusion professional can seal your home for you or help you identify the spots that need attention if you decide to do it yourself. About the only material that's going to keep these animals out is metal. They can chew right through caulks, foams, and plastic barriers. I've even seen raccoons tear a foot-long hole in a plastic ridge vent on a roof to access the attic on a client's listing. I spoke with Brian Gruel of Big City Pest and Wildlife here in Houston, and he told me that hardware cloth is the material of choice among pest control experts. While half-inch hardware cloth is most commonly available, quarter-inch or eighth-inch hardware cloth is the best for keeping animals out of any opening. Mice can get through half-inch cloth, so it's worth the time to find the smaller gauge. Try a local hardware store in an established neighborhood instead of one of the big home centers. Builders often use plastic vents and window screen to cover openings. Raccoons and squirrels can tear right through both of them, so they should be reinforced with hardware cloth to prevent intrusion. The third step is to eliminate any temptations or enticements that could encourage wildlife to visit your property. Start by eliminating any sources of food that you can. Raccoons and possums will eat almost anything, so it's impossible to remove every food source, but we can eliminate some of their favorites. If you feed outdoor pets, do it during daylight hours, as raccoons and opossums tend to be nocturnal. Establish a specific feeding time for your pet and pick up any uneaten food at the end. Free feeding is an invitation for animals to freeload. Don't leave containers of kibble where raccoons can access them. If they can't get the lid off, they'll chew right through the container. If you have fruit trees, pick up fallen fruit before dusk to eliminate those tempting morsels. Keep trash in sturdy containers and lock the lids down to keep animals out. It's always a good idea to eliminate standing water on your property, but especially if you have critters coming in for a nighttime drink. Ensure filters on ponds and fountains are working to keep the water moving. Ponds are a beautiful way to bring nature into our yards, but it's pretty difficult to limit the nature they attract. If you have a backyard pond, you may need to double down on the next suggestions. Trees and shrubs are natural homes for wildlife, and their branches provide direct avenues for our roofs and attics. Keep branches trimmed at least 10 feet from the roof to keep animals off. Fences act as superhighways for animals to travel, so be sure to seal any openings where your fence meets the house. Our warm climate, open spaces, and lush vegetation are all reasons we love South Texas, and animals love that too. By evicting, excluding, and eliminating temptation for our wild friends, we can enjoy rich biodiversity without risk to our health and homes.